as a father, when I screw up, I sit down and talk to my kids about it. I say, yeah, sometimes as a dad, it can be tough because sometimes, do you ever get stressed or you're really tired and you kind of really want something, but you can't get it? And I'll sit there and try to explain it the best I can, that I can get frustrated, I can get stressed, I can feel guilt and shame. And then I relate it to a learning lesson of like, when have you felt that way? And that brings more connection. They always say, like, you're the best daddy ever. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of The Powerful Man Show. As once again, joined by my amazing co-host, Tim, the Powerful Man Matthews, and Arthur Muguliniti. Guys, today what I want to talk about is the duplicity or the complex issue of being a successful entrepreneur and a present father. And this is something that really is difficult for a lot of men to navigate. First, you have this business that you've been building. A lot of men we work with have been building their business for 20, 30 years. And then how do you go home and be a present father? How do you balance these two roles in your life? So, Tim, I know you've coached thousands of men through this situation. Arthur, I know you have as well and lived this situation as a father of two yourself. So let's talk about some strategies of the dual pressure of being a successful entrepreneur and an amazing father.
First two things that come to mind for me is that scenario that guys often experience where they're at work feeling guilty, thinking about the kids, at home with the kids, feeling guilty, thinking about work.
Guilty.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to touch on how to break those two things throughout this. But then the other thing is, I think it'd be good for us to define what it means to be present at home. Because I think some guys, I get that it's all unique to a degree, but I think some guys could get a little bit lost thinking they're not being present when actually they're doing a good job of being present, but maybe some thoughts still come in of work or things they need to do. So in their mind, they're labeling it as, hey, I'm not present. I think if we could define that as well, it could help a lot of people.
Well, let's start with the latter and then we'll go back to the former. I think the being present part to me is you're going to think about business. We're business guys, right? That's going to come up. I think it's quality time over quantity time. I think there's an application of quantity that's appropriate here, but it's the matter of staying focused most of the time with the kids. So what does that look like? To me, that looks like not always being on your phone, putting your phone down, right? Sometimes every once in a while I'll get my phone, my kids will look at me and they're presence knowing machines, aren't they? They know when you're being present and not. They know like that. Your women are too, guys. And so putting the phone away or putting it down or sometimes putting the phone in another part of the room or the house is a good way of doing that. Being present also to me looks like saying yes to playing more. Right? Saying yes to playing more, regardless of how old your kids are, right? And sometimes when I was challenging one of the men in Banff, he said, I'm going to say yes every time to my kids when they say to play. I said, why don't you just make it a goal to play with them at least once a day? So that way they're not always having to come to dad to play, that dad's coming to them. I also told them, play with your wife once a day. See what that's like.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that could be a way of being present all the time and instigating and coming through. Because in business, we plan things, right? I'll plan my business day. Here are my 3 goals. My calendar will reflect my business goals and attributions. But how often do we plan, as a father, here's my priorities. Here's my 3 priorities as a father today.
Here's a question for you.
Yes, sir.
I've not seen you, obviously, with your kids yet. But obviously, I've seen you a lot with Bodhi and Aspen. And one thing I love about how you are with them is... you seem very present, right? So to me, one of the things you do is you attune very well to them and the situation. And I'm curious, within that presence, the thing you said about quality versus quantity struck home as well, because whenever I see you with them, I get the luxury of being able to be having a conversation with you about business or whatever, and then you got to switch quick. Because they're walking through that ranch door and that's like reaction time is boom, switching modes. There's no tapping of the game time versus playtime thing. There's no changing of clothes that we've spoken about in the past, right? All these different anchors that we say to the guys to have. There's situations outside of that just happen. Like I say, kids running in through the ranch door, daddy, daddy. So I'm curious, what goes through your mind in that situation and how do you do it?
Yeah, so I'm very deliberate in I want my kids, my family, to know that they're a priority. And that's not just lip service. The analogy I use is if you have a Labrador, right? And I actually heard this as a story, and maybe I can go back and tell the story. I will tell the story. It's going to take a little bit longer. I'll do my best not to butcher it, but I heard the story. So this guy's sitting in his office, and his dog's laying on the floor and what have you. And his wife walks in. The dog gets up, shaking his tail, will greet his wife, but he's in the middle of doing something, and she asks a question. He's like, not now. I'll get back to you later. And she closes the door. And he goes back to work, and the dog lays down. And his wife comes back in a little bit later. Dog gets up, wagging the tail, and it's only been like 5 minutes. And his wife goes, sorry, just one more thing. He's like, come on, I told you I was busy. And the wife leaves, right? And then he realizes for a second, wait a minute, right? And this is what happened. Then the door opens, the dog leaves, and the dog's tail's wagging. The wife's excited to see the dog. He comes out of the office with the dog. Dog's excited to see the wife again. The wife greets the dog, pets it and everything, and kind of ignores him. And it dawns on him that even if he goes in or out of the door, the dog is always there greeting him and happy. He's like, if I was more like the dog, would my wife and I could be better together. Now, I butchered the story and I paraphrase it, but you get the example here. So I want my kids to know that they're a priority and work's not. And it's not that when you or I are in dialogue, Tim, that I want you to think that you're less of a priority, but I also know you're a grown man and that the filter through which you see the world is very different than theirs. And so when they walk through that door and they come in running, daddy, 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 and they jump into my arms, I want them to know that they are a priority and that my love is real for them. And that gives, because I want that to be a firm understanding of I will always be there for them. And that's not just lip service. All guys say, well, if an intruder came into my house, I would defend my family. And Tim, one time you said, well, what if you're the intruder in the house? And that's true. How many times are we the intruder in our own homes as men? We put off things a little later. I will spend time, cats in the cradle. I'll spend time later with my kids, later. And I get guilty about this all the time. So when my kids are in my presence, I give them the present of my presence. I become present. I go down. I mean, we do the same thing every time. My daughter runs. She jumps like this because she knows she's going to get caught by dad. She knows I will catch her. And it's that reckless, fearless love and bond that we have. My son, the same thing. He'll do the exact same thing. And I want to keep that going for as long as I can because it's not going to go on forever.
Sure.
I think that's the podcast right there. the topic. Seriously, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not about time, quality, the rules by which you've set for yourself, the way in which those rules anchor in, not caring so much about everybody else, letting them take care of their own interpretation of what's going on. They're grown people and making those moments really count and matter and last.
I want to add one more thing to that if I can before you come in, is I also am very blessed, right? In that scenario that you gave, that you and I are talking about business and the kids come in and I just immediately switch off and go to the kids, I also am blessed to be very rooted in our relationship that I know that you're cool with that, right? And the same thing Arthur said the other day, and I'll paraphrase Arthur, I was like, oh, sorry, the kids are here. I feel like I'm being pulled in all these different directions. And Arthur was smoking a cigar, sitting outside. My daughter was hanging out with Arthur, telling him to take his shoes off, telling him all kinds of things he needs to do to better his life at 3 years.
She had some good insights.
At 3 years old. But Arthur looked at me and said, we're family. And this is what family's about. And if your family should be around, we're all family. And it was one of those things that I think I'm very blessed that the men that I choose to be around also carry the same values I carry. So when I go play with the kids or leave with my wife or anything, you guys aren't hurt. No. You actually encourage it and you elevate it. In fact, what the guys listening should know is you guys reached out to me and said, hey, look, can we watch the kids so that you and your wife can have a little bit of time together? And I thought, well, for the safety of you guys, not my kids, I'm worried about, you haven't met my daughter yet. But it's that kind of thing. I surround myself with those kinds of people. Now, people who don't share the value of family or haven't yet quite connected to it to a deep level, what tends to happen with them is they feel immense guilt. They know no one ever gets mad when I turn to my kids and play with my kids, ever. It's what happens is, at least the guys that we work with, and they all share the same morals. If anything, it reflects upon them where they feel they're lacking.
Yeah, I love that. Values is key. And just going back to being present, right? For me, it's all about capacity and focus,
Yeah.
right? How much of your capacity are you bringing to bear in that moment, and your focus as well, all right? And you mentioned the phone story. I mean, this is my pet peeve, because having the phone near you straight away takes you out of, it disconnects you, because your mind is on that. What's happening over here? And so a lot of the coaching that I've done with guys about being present is getting rid of their phone.
Yeah.
Because that's the biggest connection killer. So that you can be present. And I think this leads into the other thing is the way to be present is to have a cutoff and say, right now I'm with my family and that's it. You know, and you know, a lot of the times I advise the guys to have a cutoff time, reverse alarm. So, you know, if you're getting home you want to be home at 5, you set your alarm at 4, and you start working backwards to make sure that you leave at 5 and not start packing up at 5, you know?
How do you handle it though when it's just a random situation? Because it's okay saying we have a cut off at this time, but surely Harry or Maria must come in at they're at school, but you get the point, right? They must come in at some points during the day. How do you handle that?
It depends what's going on. Obviously, they know I'm usually on calls and the door's closed. If the door's closed, they might just open it, peek inside. If I'm talking or something, they'll close it and it'll disappear.
You're there, quiet. Kids walk off.
Yeah, but I mean, when I'm not on, my door's open, so I am available to them. Yeah, but I don't sit there. I mean, I give them the time, and if I'm on my phone upstairs, right, when they come down, I always put it down, right, in that moment, just to give them my attention. So it really depends on the moment. If it's a work time, then I'll give them 2 minutes, answer their query, they'll go away, and that's it. And if I'm chilling upstairs, then definitely when they're not around and they do come down, because they're teenagers, they're not always around. To your point, you know, it's like enjoy the time that you have, because they've got their own lives now. And so they're talking to their friends in their rooms. They only come down when they want something or they're hungry, usually. But when they do come down, then I'll make sure that I'm present for them because of that. Or I'll take a walk into the rooms and sit down and have a chat with them.
Here's another thing that can be a pro tip for the fathers out there that works well for me. This works for any relationship. So when my kids, being 3 and 6, they want to come see dad, they don't understand. Well, they do now, but the door's closed because I have to reinforce that rule. Mm-hmm. But what will work was, hey guys, I'm busy. I will come up at X time, or I'll be available at Y time. And it's closing a loop. It's just like we tell the guys about their wives. If you can't finish a conversation because you're too heated or something, say, hey, look, I need to step away this conversation and we can talk about it tonight, and we can talk about it tomorrow, because you're closing the loop for the person and when it can come. And my kids really get that. Mm-hmm. Hey, dad can't play hide and seek right now, but I'll play with you in 2 hours. Then they're like, cool. We don't know what 2 hours is, but they know dad's coming again, and it closes the loop for them and doesn't leave it open. And that's something I've learned along the way that's been really effective for me as a father, to be able to connect with my kids and also let them know that they're important enough that I am going to be playing with them, even if it's not just at this moment.
Here's a question for you too. So obviously there'll be times when you aren't as present as you want to be, right? One, how do you handle that? Like, what do you do in the moment to get back to being more present? 2, I imagine guilt comes up as well when you realize, oh crap, I am not being, or I've not been as present as I could be. How do you handle that? So those 2 things.
One I can answer clearly, one I'm still struggling with. So the guilt one hits me hard, guilt and shame, when I'm not being as present as I should. What I do to see is, how could I be more present, like next time? So a quick example is coming back from Banff. I was just exhausted. I felt like I was being pulled in 5 directions. Wasn't as present as I could have been. So I knew I needed just a few minutes by myself, a few minutes to reset the batteries, so to speak. So sometimes I'll do that. Another thing I'll do is I'll use the lottery ticket analogy that I like to talk to the guys about, right? It's kind of like, oh, I'm so tired, I'm exhausted. And I'm like, hey, if someone handed me $1 billion lottery ticket, I just won $1 billion, would I go to bed? No. You'd be dancing on the table, going crazy. So that energy is within inside of you. You just have to reset it. And I'll do the same thing with presence sometimes.
So how will you translate that to Bodie and Aspen then, the lottery ticket thing?
Yeah, so I'll forward pace. Like, okay. I'll be like, oh man, do I want to play freaking hide and seek again? My kids go, they're like, not yet. All right, come find us. You're like, dude, I can hear you. I know exactly where you are. It's not exactly exciting for me. And I run around and I do the same thing. I can hear him giggling. They're not in the oven. Interesting. Playing the same games with him, and I hear him giggle. That's fun. But then I just get to remind myself that I don't have that many of these moments again. There's not that many more of these times to come. And that'll allow me to be a little more present. And then I'll also sometimes, knowing that I need a break, I'll say, hey guys, I'll play 2 more times, then dad needs a break, right? And then of course they get bummed, but they also understand, again, I'm closing a loop for them. And I'll use the best of my energy for those 2 more times that I can.
Yeah. I made a switch a while ago between being irritated when my kids came to me. I mean, I'm older, when they were young, I was all over them and all of that because I just love kids. But as they grew older, when they come to you and all that, I started getting irritated, because I had stuff to do. Until it clicked in my mind, it's like they're looking for connection, right? I get to give it to them. And as you said, as they get older, those opportunities are going to get less and less. And so every time they do come looking for something, and they understand the situation, they understand we work from home, so they respect that. But every time they do come for that, seeking something, I give them a connection because it's not going to be that often before that soon before they leave the home. And so I also get to say yes a lot more. So like Harry says, can we go clay pigeon shooting? And I think, I don't want to go waste my Sunday morning. I'd rather sit home and have a cigar. Yeah. But no, it's yes, let's go. He's seeking that connection as well. And so it's yeses more than no's.
What about the guilt and shame? I didn't say shame, but the guilt. Let's say you realize you're not present. So before you made that switch, I imagine you must have been experiencing some kind of feeling. Maybe it was guilt. I don't know. But how do you deal with that guilt when it comes up that you feel like you could have been more present and you've not, and I've done it again? How do you deal with that?
Well, I'll go make amends straight away. If I'm feeling guilty that I haven't done something, then I will go seek them out, sit down, spend some time with them. I'm not going to harp on to it. But because I felt guilt quite a few times, because we've been in the conversation over the years, because we got to offer reset, we think like, crap.
Oh yeah.
That hearing it over and over again, it's just drummed it home for me over the years, and so I don't let opportunities go like I used to.
Yeah, I do the same thing. As I go clean it up as soon as I can and reclaim it. I also give myself some grace. I've been able to do that more and more over the years. Is give myself some grace, because I'll come home from an alpha reset where we hear all these stories of men who either grew up with absentee fathers or become absentee fathers themselves. And I give my wife a lot of credit because she'll tell me like, you're a great dad, like you are a great father. And I hear it from guys that get to see me when I'm not looking, right? And that's where it's really important when you have your peers, when they don't know that you're watching and you're dropping everything. They know you're stressed. They know you're stressed out. You got a lot on your plate. But when your kids come, you drop everything for your kids and my wife, for that matter, because it's important for me to show the people that I care about that I value them, right? So yeah, and I think I give myself just a little bit more grace of like, okay, I can't be all things to all people, and that includes my kids. And I'm a better man when I'm fulfilled, right? When my batteries are fully charged, I'm just a better man for everybody, including myself. So I give myself a little bit more grace during those times.
I'm curious. I know how powerful it is for me to be in that alpha reset every few months and to be in the reflection when you hear the guys share and what's going on for them and how life is being for them. I naturally reflect on how I'm being with Amelia or the relationship with my parents or whatever. I'm curious, with you guys having kids, what's it like for you guys being in the reset so frequently, and how does that impact this particular thing we're talking about?
For me, it's major. And as you guys know, at my reset, there was a real big section about my son. Because we had a difficult, when he was small, he was really difficult. But each time I'm there in the conversation, it just like makes it a deeper connection. And as I say, that's what's made the shift for me. With Maria, it's been easy. We've had a great relationship, so it's much easier with her. I didn't have to try as hard. But with Harry, it was really about being in the conversation and having the mirror held up continuously. Am I showing up as best as I can with him? So yeah, it's just being reminded and being conscious of what I wanted and where I was and what the gap was.
Yeah, for me, it's a little bit, there's that for sure. There's also, whenever I go away, even if it's small, my kids, Daddy, don't go, and they want extra huggies and kissies, right? And all these things. And I think it's also because my kids at young age, my daughter was born during COVID. So we're just together as a family unit. My son's favorite thing to do, be at home with the family or just be with the family. That's all he cares about as long as we're together. He doesn't care what we do. Well, he cares, but anytime we're together, that's all he wants. And my daughter's pretty close to that. So very tight family unit. So when I leave, they want it. Now I tell them I'm going to leave to help other daddies be better daddies, and they kind of like that. And now that they get to come and meet everybody, they meet my friends as they know them, and the men become my friends. They enjoy that portion. So I did a FaceTime with them at breakfast or a couple other meals, and they saw people they knew, like Jay, Jared, and they remembered a lot of the guys that had been here to the ranch and had met them. And they see we have, I'm coming back to the point here, but we have our TV, and our TV's on a lot, but it's on, we have Google Photos rotate pictures. And so they see you guys, they see other men that are in the movement, and they know them by name, and they'll ask questions about them. So there's integration there. And when I'm out now for reset, I can feel some guilt of, I should be with my family right now, right? And at the same time, it reinforces the patterns and the behaviors of being the best father I can possibly be, right? And that's why my wife, Erin, loves for me to go to these things. Like, it's a love-hate thing. She doesn't want to solo parent the kids. At the same time, I come back a better husband every time.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, I can only begin to imagine what it must be like. It's such a gift being in that conversation every few weeks.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. When you work as hard as Arthur and I do, it becomes...
Well, we had less skill. You have to make it up with effort, right?
Sure.
Have more skill, less effort.
So a couple things guys can do. This is something I did, more than 7 years ago. I'm thinking with my wife, but now with my family, because my kids are young, is I schedule time with my family, right? I have 4 p.m. family time on my calendar. I don't hit it every time. In fact, a lot of times I don't. But my plan is to unwind by then. And I start early in the morning. I try not to attend any meetings. So we have an international company. So 8 a.m. my time is 4 p.m. UK. So it gets late there. But I also want to wake my kids up in the morning, or when they get up, I want to be there. And I want them to see me when they get up and they come cuddle on the couch, and we spend that quality time first thing in the morning. And I put them to bed at night, play with them in the afternoons. And I'm able to take breaks throughout the day when I can, to really effectively be there for them and with them. So I think I will always say, show me your calendar and I'll show you your priorities. So I think for guys that want to be great entrepreneurs and great fathers, start scheduling in time with your kids. I told Erin, starting next week, I want to date my kids.
I was thinking that, yeah.
Yeah. So of course she says, well, I do too. I said, great. Thursday night, we have date night. Why don't we do Tuesday night? I'll take Bodie out, my son. You take Aspen out. We can just do it at the same time. She was thinking it was exclusive. I was like, no. And then next week we'll switch. And the kids will always get one parent to hang out with, and they'll get solo time with their parents.
Yeah.
And so that's something I want to incorporate starting next week with my family and get that on the calendar. So when things, and of course things can come up, right? Like, oh, we have an alpha resets coming up in another week from now. So I won't be able to do it then. That's fine. Give yourself some opportunity to change and shift, but get these priorities on your calendar. Right? If you say you want to be a great father, then where is great father on the calendar, right? Where is that?
Yeah, I think some of the guys in the inner circle and that we work with one-on-one, they often talk about those daddy dates.
Yeah.
Has been the favorite times. And one of the things that has shifted the needle the most in the connection they have with the son or daughter.
Yeah. I can think of a story right now is one of our guys who was actually with us in Jasper. The story almost brought tears to my eyes for some reason is, he's been very successful financially. He took his daughters to Hawaii. They went out to a nice dinner, right? So their daughters are all dressed up in these nice dresses and what have you. And I want to say his daughter is 8 and 9, right? So they're not super, they're young, but my world, not super young. And they're walking home from the beach, and one of the girls got like their feet wet or what have you. And they're like, oh, Dad, can we go in the water? He's like, yeah, go for it. So the girls, can you imagine how giddy they are in these nice dresses, are splashing in the ocean and getting soaked and wet and being kids, right? I love that dad moment. And then they walk back to the resort. It's a nice resort they were staying at, very intimate, very small boutique, very high end. And the girls ask, Dad, can we go in the pool? Go for it. And there's people around watching, and you have these two girls just being girls. I picture in my mind's eye, right? I don't know, wasn't there, jumping in the pool and swimming and laughing and giggling. That had to be infectious throughout the whole area. And I think about that as being a dad of like, when do you get to have those moments where we strip the rules down, we let the rules go? And I think that's really an important factor to be a father. One thing that I do that I think is somewhat unique, maybe not very unique, but I think somewhat because of the work that we do here, is as a father, when I screw up, I sit down and talk to my kids about it. I say, yeah, sometimes as a dad, it can be tough because sometimes, do you ever get stressed or you're really tired and you kind of really want something, but you can't get it? And I'll sit there and try to explain it the best I can. And, that I can get frustrated. I can get stressed. I can feel guilt and shame. And I explain that I'm feeling it. And then I relate it to a learning lesson of like, when have you felt that way? And it brings more connection, right? If I've yelled and I snap and I yell and I do all those things that we hate, we'd never want a camera seeing us do, right? Never anything horrible, but not the best versions of ourselves. But I sit down with my kid, even my daughter who's 3, and I sit down and talk to him about it. And they always say, like, you're the best daddy ever. And they'll hug me and kiss me and, we'll turn it into like a moment of connection, just like I would do with my wife. It brings us closer together. But it also gives them a moment to see that their father's not perfect. I get to be vulnerable. Therefore, they can share their feelings. It's safe. And then I get to learn more about their world. Like, oh, yeah, at school, Johnny doesn't play with me and it makes me feel bad too. Like, oh, yeah, how do you handle that? And now it becomes a learning experience.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
I think it's key that we spend long times with our, a great deal of time with our kids. And obviously that's not going to happen day to day because we work and all of that. But I think you mentioned it's saying yes to long periods of time with him. So taking your son for a hike for maybe 2-3 hours with just you and him, or a date, 2-3 hours, where they know that they got you. You don't have your phone on you, or you switched it off, so you're not checking your phone, and they just got you. Because initially kids won't open up, right? And they definitely won't open up if they know they don't have your attention. But over a period of time, they're going to relax, start talking, and then you'll get to know so much about them and what's happening in their life, which is what you want. And they're going to know they've got you for that time period. So we get to make it non-negotiable, which is another thing you mentioned, Doug, putting it on your schedule. You put it in and it's a non-negotiable. It doesn't get moved. And then, you move from there.
Have you considered taking a trip with Maria or Harry?
I have. And that actually came from one of the guys in the movement. He says, like, he's taking his son away. And I thought, like, hey, why am I not taking my son away? And what could I do with my son, So that's coming up. I'm not sure what it is yet, but definitely looking at that.
A trip to the ranch.
Why not?
Exactly.
Something to look forward to.
Yeah, something I'm considering doing, and I came with this idea one of these nights. I couldn't sleep very well in the last few nights, actually, is I thought, how cool would it be, because I want to be more handy with building stuff. I didn't learn how to do that as a kid, is with my son building a box, right, with a lid on it, and having my daughter help paint it, what have you. But being a thing where if daddy's too much on his phone in the night, you can ask me and you could pick up the phone, and having them ceremoniously put the phones
ceremoniously.
Yeah, well, but what I mean by that is
it's a great idea.
It is ceremonious, where they know unequivocally, or I could just hand them my phone and say, put it in the box, that then they know that they've got my attention. So it gives a trigger or an anchor for them to actually know that they've got me.
Building the box.
Well, it's hard sometimes. Like, kids will be playing or doing their own thing, and you're kind of like, okay, they're playing trucks or whatever. I'm just going to go check the phone, check some messages, knock a few things out so I don't have to do them later. But you're not really they know you're being present. Yeah. One of the things I'll do is my son loves most kids love show. My daughter doesn't seem to care much, but my son just, he'll just zone out. So what I do is I consciously go sit down next to him and just put my arm. And then if I sit down next to him, inevitably he'll be leaning to the left on the couch, if you can imagine, and I'm sitting up. And then within a couple minutes, he floats over and he's leaning on me, watching the show. He's cuddling me, but he's still watching a show, but I'm there enjoying I'm enjoying something that he enjoys with him.
Yeah, exactly.
And he loves that.
And I think that's key. If you're going to spend time with your kid, do something they enjoy.
Yep.
Not something you want to do, because it's their time.
Yeah. My dad used to take me on errands everywhere, and he made it fun to his plate, you know, but that was like kind of what we did is we went to the dry cleaners, and my dad was a businessman. We did all those kinds of stuff, but he didn't spend, you know, I don't recall him spending a lot of time doing those kinds of things that I really like, just the things that I liked in those kinds of moments. We threw a football, played basketball. So to be fair to my father, we did a lot of those types of activities, but the quote, more boring ones, maybe not as much.
One of my favorite memories as a kid with my dad was him taking me up to the local field just to play football. Right? I was goalie and he was crossing the ball and jumping out and catching it. I just loved it. It only happened a handful of times, but the memory sticks out. I loved it.
Yeah. Awesome. You're smiling ear to ear.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah.
It was great. The weather was terrible, but having so much fun. I didn't care about that stuff as a kid.
Yeah.
Right? I'm sure he was probably thinking, oh my God, it's raining, it's this, it's muddy, it's that. But I was just loving it. Loved it.
That is cool. I get to do a little more of that, which would be great. Go through. So, I mean, there's some practical action steps. If I were to give one thing to the men listening to this, I'll go back to show me your calendar. I'll show you your priorities. Get your family time or your fatherhood time specifically onto your calendar. Do it now. Open up friggin' Outlook, Google Calendar, whatever it is. If you're on your phone, pause this, go over there and schedule at least one calendar activity for your family only. And that gets to be put in the toothbrushing category, not the massage category. What I mean by that is most of you guys probably brush your teeth every day without having to think about it, and you don't skip it. Whereas a massage, you can do not you, Tim, but most people, like, they'll get a massage when it's a gift or whatever. That's not the case here. It's not what we're talking about. We're making this like a mandatory time that you don't take off the schedule, and start there. Start there and having that time as a conscious time with your kids.
Yeah. I'm going to go with the phone. Get rid of the phone.
Yeah.
That's such a connection killer, with whether it's your kids or your wife. Just put in another room. That's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking give yourself some grace. You're going to mess up. You're going to make mistakes, but the faster you can attune to it and just give yourself some grace instead of making yourself feel guilty, I think the quicker you will course correct and get back to just, I think also what you said, you've got a rule, right? You've got a rule of what it looks like. When the kids walk in through the ranch door, you do bum, 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 bum.
That's my house door too, at home.
Yeah, whatever. But there's a standard that exists,
Yep.
right? And that standard is a non-negotiable. And I don't think there's much of a standard that exists for a lot of the guys that we speak with. I think in the movement there is. In the guys in the beginning there isn't. Because I've never thought. I mean, whoever talks about creating a standard and a rule, like a minimum standard with your kids, a minimum standard of connection, you just don't hear it, right? So I think coming up with that minimum standard of connection of what it looks like, the rule that you operate at, and the standard you refuse to drop beneath, and then giving yourself some grace in living up to that, right? Not delusion, but grace.
Yeah, and I'll just end with this if I can. And I talk about this a lot also at the Alpha Reset. I want to be the father that my kids choose to call as an adult for advice, right? That the ones they call for like wisdom, that they can trust. They could talk about anything, drugs, sex, whatever it is, and they'll know that they'll be greeted with love, firmness, and honesty, right? Firmness is important to me, clearly, but they'll be greeted and they'll know what they're going to get, and they know they can turn to dad with anything, and I will be there for them, right? I'll pick up the phone. I'll be there anywhere in the world they are. Every dad wants that. Very few dads do the action steps to get there, and I'm just in a very blessed position that I get to talk to thousands of fathers on a regular basis and take the culminary of all that information and do my best to walk that path.
Beautiful.
Gentlemen, as we always say in the moment of insight, take massive action. More than 3 here to look for. Put it in a calendar. Ditch the phone. Give yourself more grace, I'll say, when you're going through your situation and whatever you're doing, and less regrets and less shame as you go through. Whatever you do, do something. Do something to move yourself forward. You don't want to be that father that gets the obligatory Christmas card with somebody else's writing and a signature on the bottom. You want to be the dad that the children want to be around. So do that, take action. Take action in your relationships, your marriage, and also your business. Until then, make it a great week. We'll see you next time on The Powerful Man Show.